This is TWiT.
A few days back, President Trump tweeted out that mail-in ballots were, quote, substantially fraudulent. He was predicting a rigged election, so you know, the usual stuff. Soon after, Twitter actually slapped that tweet, or that series of tweets, with a fact-checking link. The first time that it's actually done so with a tweet coming from the president, who's citing, let's just say, tenuous facts. Of course, Trump did not like that very much. So now there's high likelihood, in fact, it might just be imminent, that we're going to see a signed executive order sometime today that aims to regulate social media, or at least inspire regulation of social media. Joining us is Emily Birnbaum from Protocol, who actually got her hands on a copy of the executive order late last night. She joins us now. Welcome, Emily.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
You bet. It's our pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for taking the time. So let's start with Section 230, completely in the crosshairs here as far as what we know about this executive order. Why is Section 230 kind of like historically important to where we are now? How might it actually change if Trump's arm get their way in this case?
So Section 230 is the law that allows social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook to make decisions about the kind of content that they have on their platforms. So it both it allows them to avoid lawsuits for the kinds of things that people say, and it allows them to make their own decisions about how they want to deal with things like, misinformation or fake news. And it is directly in the crosshairs because for years now, with increasing volume, conservatives have been calling Section 230 a quote unquote sweetheart deal. And, they've said, why do these private companies have this special immunity that other businesses don't have? And so there have been a lot of conservatives who have really wanted to see the president, the administration, Congress take on Section 230 and maybe pare back some of those protections in response to allegations of anti-conservative bias online. So this is sort of like the fulfillment of their dreams, if ultimately it is signed by the president.
So what exactly in this executive order, and mind you, I should reiterate, like it has not been issued at the time of this recording. It very well might happen before this podcast is released because it's expected sometime today on Thursday, May 28th. But what are the components of this executive order that directly threaten Section 230? Like what do the mechanics of that look like?
So they have to do this very precarious legal dance to make sure that they're not overriding Congress in some way. So it essentially asks the Commerce Department to petition the FCC to issue a rulemaking, so to, open up a review of Section 230 and consider, whether companies are violating some of the provisions of Section 230 and whether they shouldn't be allowed to have that protection. So it opens up, it sort of empowers federal regulators to take a look at Section 230 and bypasses Congress, by doing that. It also would gather together state attorneys general to look at allegations of anti-conservative bias to see if maybe they could bring their own suits according to the administration's interpretation of Section 230. And it would also instruct the FTC, which is another body that has some say over tech issues. It would instruct the FTC to look at some of these complaints and maybe bring some lawsuits according to, again, their interpretation of Section 230. So it would overall just empower a lot of different levers of government to review and, potentially pare back these protections.
Okay, and now I know based on reading through your article, the draft order also talks about pulling back ad spending on social platforms by these federal agencies. How much of an effect would something like that actually have on the platform, or is that just kind of like an also like thumbing the nose at the social networks to say, see, bad company, so we're going to take our money and run?
I think it's both. I don't think it would, by any means destroy, any company's bottom line. But there is a recent government report that found federal agencies altogether spent $1.5 billion on advertising and PR over the last 10 years. And, increasingly, some of that is going to Facebook, it's going to Google. And, they're oftentimes sort of like PSAs. You can think about the census. The U.S. Census bought a lot of advertisements online in order to, get out their message, increase participation. So those are the kinds of things that this would, pull back. But it's an interesting provision that was not in previous versions of this executive order. And it seems, according to a lot of legal experts that I've talked to today, that it's actually far more within the White House's purview to ask federal agencies to pull back spending like that. So it's interesting and probably largely symbolic.
Right. Yeah, it feels like a symbolic gesture as well. Now, one thing that I've definitely read a lot about as I've been following this story is the fact that it's easy to peg this as a White House versus social media platform sort of thing. But the reality is that it's much wider than that, right? Like this is essentially White House versus sites that differ in opinion or in belief of what, let's say, the administration is saying. If someone says, hey, you're citing something that is not a fact and we want to just merely let people know, whether that's a social media platform or whether that's a site that sells clothes or whatever, that wants to put a banner on their site because they believe in something. I don't know what it could be, but essentially this would be a chilling effect for all websites if it were to go through, right? Like this could really escalate more and more as we go along.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about Section 230 is people have said that it enabled and continues to empower the modern internet. So it doesn't just help out websites like, Twitter or Facebook. It also, it enables Reddit, it enables Airbnb, it enables a lot of the websites that we rely on. But then, the way the executive order is written, it would kind of put it in the hands of federal regulators to decide, which companies they determine are violating provisions of Section 230. So, some people have said it's sort of unlikely, if it even gets to this level, that federal regulators would want to take on, say, Reddit or, Airbnb or something like that. So it sort of sets an alarming precedent for those companies that rely on it. But I don't know if I would say that, it's the end times for all of the internet.
It's easy to think that everything is the end times these days. We're just kind of in that frame of mind right now. It's hard to avoid. Mark Zuckerberg was on Fox News, I believe this was last night, saying that platforms like Facebook and Twitter shouldn't, quote, be the arbiter of truth of everything that people say online. And as I was reading that, I was like, the question that popped up for me is whether that is a comment that adheres closely to Facebook's actions in this regard, or whether that's a comment that's meant to speak more as like a self-preservation sort of thing. And it's probably actually a little bit of both. What do you think as far as that's concerned?
Yeah, I think it's both. I mean, I think particularly Facebook, that's something Mark Zuckerberg has said before. He's gotten criticism for saying that. It's something that Facebook says really drives its content moderation policies. I think he's saying it right now, and he's saying it on Fox News in order to curry some favor with the White House, because it sort of sets them apart from Twitter, which is in the middle of this, war, this battle with the White House. But it's true that Facebook, on the whole, is more hands-off, particularly when it comes to political speech, than Twitter. So you can just look at their political ad policies. Twitter completely wiped political ads from their platform. Facebook continues to allow them, continues to allow politicians a wide breadth over, what they can say. So it actually is a distinction between how these companies think about and treat speech online.
Yeah, and it's not even saying that Facebook doesn't have its own fact-checking system in place. They've had that for a while now. When I really look at the two companies and the like visceral reaction of Trump reacting to what happened on Twitter versus Facebook, it seems to be just the mere fact that Trump actually relies on Twitter and posts on Twitter and kind of expects his, whether he believes them to be true or not, his air quotes facts, to be able to reach as many people without any resistance. He does that actively with Twitter. He doesn't as actively on Facebook. I don't even know if President Trump has a Facebook account, but you never hear about that. It's always about Twitter. Yeah. Do you think that's kind of part of what's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, he does use Facebook, and his campaign uses Facebook, and he does have a significant following, but he's the Twitter president. That's how he's been known since the beginning. He talks directly to people through Twitter. So Indeed. I think, he has actually posted some of the same stuff about mail-in ballots on Facebook, and Facebook said, "Oh, we're hands off on this stuff." So he is communicating some of the same messages across platforms, but Twitter just has this very special role in his presidency and how he imagines connecting with his base. And so I think that's why it's sort of like the perfect foil for him.
Yeah, it really does feel that way. Another way that it feels for me, it seems like it's a very convenient distraction. Obviously, the world is in a very interesting position right now. Health and well-being issues are top of mind for people as we're, kind of working our way through, what this whole coronavirus thing means and shelter in place. And people are either trusting that the shelter in place is, was well-intentioned or not, going completely on the opposite side of that. Definitely, this seems like a lightning rod for the Trump base as we head into the election. And I guess the question that I have about that is Twitter then, by placing this fact check label on President Trump's tweets, are they kind of playing into the hands, kind of playing that role for the administration that the administration actually wants right now? They want some sort of a distraction, and this is the perfect distraction from all the bad that's happening.
I mean, you could say it that way. You could tell the story that way, but you could also think about all of the enormous pressure that Twitter is facing from the other side. Twitter and all these social media platforms have been accused of, spreading misinformation, particularly around elections, spreading, nonsense and debunked conspiracy theories about the virus itself. So they are responding to just a different set of pressures, and they're sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place with this. It was their decision to take a stand against the president. It was a bold thing to do. Some people have said that it was kind of stupid, but they are really sticking by it, and Jack Dorsey is sticking by it. We'll see how it plays out.